Have you been getting into sound healing or have become interested in sound baths? And you're wondering, is this really the best modality out there that's capable of so much? Or is this just one of those annoying trends that's a fad and comes and goes? The answer might surprise you. And like with a lot of things, it depends. To give you my background in sound healing, because I am and have been for a while now a sound healer, I got into it in 2018 by relative accident. One of the very first things that started my healing journey is when my mother knew I was getting into meditations because I had a friend who became a Buddhist monk, and he would send me them. She bought these binaural beats tracks from the Monroe Institute. There they deal with out-of-body experiences and exploring consciousness, things like that. They have a great center that, unfortunately, I still haven't been out to yet, but hopefully one of these days. And I listened to them. Surprisingly enough, they were helpful. I was able to meditate a little bit better with them playing in the headphones. I was going to explain what a binaural beat is, but that's another topic. Anyways, I recommend trying them out. My Buddhist monk friend also recommended this meditation app. I think I started using it back in 2017 called Insight Timer. Because before that, for years, I would start a meditation practice and then relatively quickly fall out of it. And it would just be starting, making some improvement, and then something would happen and I'd fall out of practice. Basically how you're not supposed to do a meditation practice. That was me off and on for at least several years. With Insight Timer, I would actually be able to keep going, have a daily consistent meditation practice. And I liked how, even if I didn't have time, in my opinion, I could even do a 1-minute meditation. I didn't do that often. I knew that would be cheating and kind of defeat the point. But for those days where I just wanted to keep the streak going, I could do at least something. And there were various meditations. So it was really helpful. And one of the friends I made on there, because you could add friends from what I remember, they invited me to join this group. The timing of it is certainly synchronistic because I wasn't a member of that many groups and didn't use that feature for that much longer after that. And it wasn't even a large group where people are just posting and you lose track of everything. There was only like 1 or 2 posts. And the latest one was about a sound bath, which, interestingly enough, I think it was for the previous month and I'd missed it. And the person described what a sound bath is. So I looked up that yoga studio where it was at, and it turns out on that studio's website, they had another sound bath coming up. I figured it's worth a shot. I went, and it was this partner couple. They had this big introduction, and they were a little condescending. The lady was introducing her male partner as, he's a Reiki master, and he's going to be going around and giving Reiki. So I was like, ooh. They did a variety of instruments. And even though At that point, it was right up my alley and should have been something I liked. It was average. Not bad, don't get me wrong. And to this day, I still say it would be very hard, not impossible, but hard to screw up a sound bath. Even someone who doesn't know exactly what they're doing could still do one that's halfway decent for sure, maybe even a little bit better. I was caught off guard by that because I had high expectations, and that is something you should never do, no matter what modality it is, even if it is something that has a great reputation. So I took a break from sound healing and sound baths for, I think it was like 2 to 3 months after that, maybe a little bit longer, because I believe that was like end of summer, early fall. But by the winter, I tried a new one, and I think this was around like early December. There was this one out by Venice, and it was described as a reishi mushroom tea sound bath, focusing heavily on the crystal balls. So I was like, ooh. I end up going, and right away, it's a very cozy environment. I will say that. We were kind of in a partly indoors, partly outdoors area, and the small group was sitting around on the cushions, and a couple of people knew each other. They were catching up, and it was just a nice introduction. The lady who was doing the sound bath partnered up with this company, a small company that had these special types of teas and chocolates with real organic ingredients, healthy ones too, like the rarer mushrooms that you don't necessarily find in the grocery store. When it was time to start, we drank the teas there, and right away, I felt much more relaxed. Reishi mushroom tea works, at least this brand. I should come off as a connoisseur on Reiki mushroom tea, so I don't want to speak for all of them, but the blend I tried, it really helped me relax. Then the sound bath was so beautiful. She was an amazing crystal ball player. She was also an amazing meditation leader on top of that. Because you can't just do like any old meditation. She blended a meditation that was really appropriate. It really felt like this gentle and kind of etheric guided sound journey. She knew when to play each ball at the right time and in the right manner. Everything just flowed seamlessly. At the end, I was blown away. I realized I was grateful I gave it a second chance. Because after the first time, I was like, but because this one sounded really good, I'm like, you know what? I should give it another try. And I'm so glad I did, because it was incredible, nothing short of incredible, which is why now that I'm further along in my spiritual path, that I have the belief it's always good to give most things, not all, but most things, a second chance. Because the facilitator or practitioner really does make a difference. You could have a great experience with one person and a not so great experience with another person with the exact same modality. Could even be the same lineage. They could have had the same teacher. It doesn't matter. People over time tend to develop their own styles, and what resonates with one person might not resonate with another. So that was one time that it definitely was beneficial. I gave something another shot. After that, I continued going to public group sound baths for pretty much the following year, a majority of it. I checked out different styles, different types, There was even one I was amazed by that I went to twice. It was called the Dark Ambient Sound Bath. I believe they did it in LA and also San Francisco. They ended it within a year later, which was surprising because it had a really great turnout. And I think they also served a beverage beforehand. Not as good as the reishi mushroom tea, but it was still a nice gesture for sure. And that was interesting because, like, halfway through, or maybe closer 2/3, there was a space where they'd encourage you to let out a big primal scream, which is really good for releasing. I like that because so many of the things in the LA healing community focus on the love aspect, but that was interesting. A sound bath that focused on the shadow aspect. I got exposed to all these creative ideas, and there were other ones I went to as well, many others. I was becoming quite an expert in the LA group public sound baths. I was also really enjoying it too, but I was still intrigued by how they did that. And at this point, I had started learning Reiki and I think crystal healing as well, possibly some other things. I was still new as a healer, but I had started learning some healing modalities. That's the main point. I did not know how they were able to do that. I loved it, but I figured I'm not a musician. The frustrating thing was I used to be as a kid. I had taken violin lessons for, I think, 3 years, and I'd gotten really great at it. But I had a bad experience with the teacher. She was definitely someone that should have been teaching, and she was terrifying as a kid. This was in the later stages of elementary school. Because of that, I think I really shunned musical instruments for a long time. Even though I had a gift, I picked it up really well and could do good things with it. But I didn't like doing it. And not necessarily the act of playing instruments themselves, but I think I just associated musical instruments with that horrible lady. When there's trauma, for lack of a better word, I still haven't even called it that because I haven't really analyzed it and wasn't one of my major ones, but it was. When I associate that lady with music, it kept me away from it for a long time. And here I was, do I want to learn everything all over again? How many years is that? Like over 30? Well, no, not 30, at least 20, maybe more. A long time, decades, I'll say that. Do I really want to pick up where I left off decades later? It wasn't riding a bike. I figured I lost just about everything, the notes, the scales. Nevertheless, by the end of that year, I had started looking into sound healing classes. I came across a weekend one that was relatively affordable in the moderate price range. I decided I'm going to do it. And I did. It was an interesting class, a cool small group vibe. And I enjoyed the lunch breaks. I became friends with this one lady who lived out in Idlewild, and we're still friends to this day, which is crazy because it's a good deal later. And she's been very supportive of me over the years. Well, the downside was we really didn't get that much hands-on instruction. At the end of the second day, we split up into small groups and we did get to go to different stations and alternate where we would play the instruments with whoever we were partnered up with. And fortunately, I was partnered up with that other female student who I ended up going to lunch with. I was a little nervous because I realized I didn't know how to play them. I didn't know what order to play the crystal bowls in. I was going to different stations, and it was the same type of feeling. Fortunately, I ended up at the station at the end where they had Tibetan bowls, and they were basically doing vibration bowls, which is when they put the Tibetan bowl on you. Turns out I loved it and I could do it. I was good at it. I actually liked it the best out of everything because not only do you get the benefit of the sound, but the resonance would go right into you. And I had a real hard time meditating, which is why I think, in fairness, I had trouble with the first sound bath, because even with those types of frequencies, I still really couldn't relax. But this commanded my attention and got me out of my head quickly. You could say it was a blessing in disguise. Then, I think in that same station, there were also tuning forks. Those are easy to use, but really effective. I'm like, okay, good. So there's two things I could do. And for a year after that, give or take, I pretty much just used the Tibetan bowls and tuning forks for my sound healing practice. But I was giving sessions that got very high feedback. People loved them. But I didn't really understand how to do much else, even after taking that class. But I was okay with that. As long as I got some value, which I did, it was okay. And also, to be fair, the instructor, give good information on the tuning forks, like what were some good frequencies to use, what combinations. So that's what I want to say. It wasn't a bad class by any means. It just didn't help me as much as I thought it would. I had a desire to go deeper. I still had this urge to learn how to play a sound bath. That female sound facilitator who did the reishi mushroom T1, and I had gone to at least one more of hers, recommended this 6-month program on sound healing, which I looked up, and it seemed great. It was very interesting. I figured, okay, this is much more comprehensive. But it was in Northern California, and I was trying to think about whether I leave Southern California for 6 months to go study there or take the online option. Well, turns out it was right before the lockdowns and everything like that, anyways, with the pandemic. So, long story short, I ended up taking the online option, which was still really good. Granted, sound healing, for the most part, and sound baths in particular, are something you do want to learn at least partly in person, because nothing beats hands-on experience and instruction with that. But this series of classes blew me away in a different aspect. Because before this program, in LA, I thought sound baths were you just wore all white, put on this big cheesy smile, and just said, love, love, and you just play away. Well, when I signed up for this, very quickly I began to realize, okay, there's something way more to this. I was learning about these advanced techniques and the capabilities of frequencies in various forms that aren't used in the mainstream, it would appear that they could heal just about anything. I've seen examples and people and different machines have been referenced where there's been some incredible stories. Unfortunately, we're still at a point where you can't talk about it openly. And if you do offer a service like this, you can't make it public without fear of some type of crackdown on you and or your business. But I recommend it's something worth going down the rabbit hole on. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. At the very least, I think you're going to be amazed by what's out there. People just don't know. There's been so many uses of sound healing throughout history. Once you learn it and see what it's done, it can be depressing at first. Knowing what is possible, then coming back to this brutal system and way of dealing with things that we have here now currently. It was either slightly before I took that 6-month program and then maybe a little after. I also took some other classes as well. I went deeper with the Tibetan balls. I learned how to do a sound massage. And that's also where, instead of the vibration where you just leave them on, the sound massage, you slowly and gently glide the Tibetan balls over certain body parts. And you can kind of do a vibration bow while you're doing that. It feels like heaven. I also took some sound healing for yoga teachers classes, and my 200-hour Hatha yoga training also included a segment on sound healing. I learned how to play the gongs, because there was a gong training in my Kundalini yoga teacher training. Then I also took this 2-day level 1 shamanic gonging class. There were 3 levels to that, and I only did the first one, which is really all I needed. That's what I wanted to, because I'm not a huge gong player. But even that was also an investment that I think was worth it. There was an assortment of other ones I took on top of that. It was one of my favorite parts of my healing journey, especially when I was still in the spiritual seeking phase. Sound and frequencies I was just devouring the knowledge on them. I was taking class after class, and not just to do it. I really was genuinely fascinated by what was out there. And I had gone to some private sound healing sessions for myself. It's bringing back good memories. I don't often talk about everything, but a lot of it's coming back now in a good way. I certainly have a fond recollection of a lot of those experiences, if not all. And along the way, I finally did get the courage to do a sound bath. It was after I completed that 6-month program. I did really well, and I just went from there. I kept practicing, doing it for myself, which is also a great practice to do and really helps with meditations and personal healing. I've really enjoyed meeting other sound healers that are on the cutting edge of what's available. That 6-month program had some great teachers that I ended up finding and working with. Some had these devices. One was this sound psychedelic journey where you're using this like machine and no plant medicine. and it takes you on the surreal audio and visionary quest. In the end, I've seen so many aspects of sound healing. I've witnessed the fluff, where people take a weekend class that could be better and just go out there. The problem with that is people don't know what they don't know. So they're only exposing the ones attending to a fraction of what sound and frequencies are really capable of. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's what some people, all they can handle. That's also more accessible. It still exposes more people to it and might pique their interest. If you go into the deep, crazy stuff right away, there's a lot of people out there that'll be like, oh, okay, calm down, take a step back. Or they might just look at you funny, like, oh, sure, they can do that, right. I know Western medicine is the best thing ever. And there's nothing else, there's no alternatives that would work or make me healthier. On the other side, it's really an unexplored territory right now. It can certainly do much more than we're using it for. And even Western doctors do use frequencies to break up kidney stones. Also, riot police use frequencies to disperse crowds. And one of my teachers said in class, if it can be used for bad, it can be used for good. He had that belief of anything like that. There was always the reverse possible, which makes a lot of sense. I can't say undiscovered, because I do believe that there were societies who knew the truth. There's even a theory, and I'll let you discover this on your own, that bells had uses for them that aren't shared publicly now. Supposedly they could ward off negative energy and be healing as well. So in the end, yes, there can be aspects in the current seed of sound healing or sound baths that are cheesy and cringe, especially in the love and light spiritual community. But, and a big, big but, sound and frequency, I really think, has the most potential out of any of the other modalities. It ranks as high as any of them of what it can do and what it can heal, which is why I recommend exploring it. If you're curious about sound healing or sound baths, where to get started, either for training or what instruments you should look into first, I am offering private coaching. Check out the link below to see if we're a good fit. As always, take what I say with a grain of salt, take what resonates, and throw away what doesn't.